So today's webinar is entitled Water Safety for Anglers, and our guest speaker today is Bernard Cahill of Irish Water Safety Ireland. You're very welcome, Bernard. And Bernard holds the role of Education and Sport Development Executive within the Irish Water Safety. So now I'm going to hand over to Bernard, and Bernard is going to share his screen with us.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're well and happy, and thank you very much for joining me here today. And I suppose thank you very much to the team here as well for the invitation and for the opportunity to speak to you all. I really appreciate it. I'm actually back in the office today for the first time in months. So as I look out over my right shoulder, we're right on the water here in the Corrib in Galway, and the water is glistening and it's beautiful. So we're all very happy. My own name is Bernard Cahill, Education and Sport Development Executive for Water Safety Ireland. And if I can go to the next slide. So we have an awful lot of information available straight off at watersafety.ie, and that would have a lot of stuff up there as well for angling. And if you do have any emails, my own personal email is bernardcahill@watersafety.ie, but I'd love to answer any questions that you would have using the feature that was already mentioned. So first off, just because it's entitled safety for angling safety, I suppose I'm not here to throw the rule book at you, and it's a celebration. This is all about celebrating fishing and celebrating angling as a pastime and as a sport and as a hobby. So and then the fact that you guys are here and a part of this webinar suggests to me that you can be agents of change. You're people that really care about this, and I think that you need to be role models and exemplars in your communities all over Ireland, and I think that hopefully will be something that you will take a lot of pride in this season. So I have no idea if this is going to work, so I'm going to stop my share for a quick second and just see if you can see this video here. I'm just going to try this. If it doesn't work, I will quickly revert back to my presentation. There's no big panic. Can you hear that? I just get a little thumbs up if you can.
No, we can't, Bernard.
Okay. So anyway, I'm just going to talk you through what it's about. It is in the presentation anyway, so it's not a big deal. But Water Safety Ireland are actually launching a brand new angling campaign that will be coming out by the end of this week. So keep an eye out for it. And again, it's something that you can probably share on your own personal social media, and just get the message out there. So it's basically a campaign based around angling and best practices for angling. So that's coming in hot, and it's going to be very nice. I was going to do a little sneak preview there, but it doesn't seem to be working out. So not a big deal. So just to get going, within Water Safety Ireland, our own education approach is cradle to grave. This is what we're trying to do these days. So basically, we've just developed a brand new program for toddlers, and that will be rolled out in preschools come May. We have a very successful primary school program called PAWS. That is primary aquatics water safety. We've developed another program called WISE, which is our secondary school program. We're working closely with universities, and then we advertise each season, each year to adults as well. So we're trying to create a water safety culture throughout the country. And we're an island nation. We should be promoting water safety, understanding the basic principles, and my own personal belief then would be that we would educate and not ban. You know, it's the safest way to make sure that nobody gets into any danger when out and about is just to ban it, which just wouldn't work for us. So this is about celebrating and doing things properly and perfectly. So I guess we're trying to promote best practice and to create a water safety culture, as opposed to just blanket banning these things that have a little bit of risk associated. Obviously, fishing has some risk associated with it, so it's about mitigating and reducing the risk that is there. Just the first thing that I want to talk to you about is a new site that we have up on our watersafety.ie. It's basically it's a place where you can report missing ring buoys and live buoys. So as you are out fishing this summer or over the next couple of months or next couple of years even, that if you did spot a ring buoy that was missing or damaged, that you could actually report. So you could report that through this portal, through this website. You can actually go and report the missing ring buoy. So I think that's a really important one to take down. So let's say you're out fishing on the Corrib and you spot that there's a ring buoy that has the rope cut off it, or a ring buoy that is damaged, that is in disrepair, that you can go on here. It'll send, after you fill in and complete the form, it'll send an email to the Water Safety Development Officer from that county, and you can actually go then, and that can do spot. So that's how you can help us out. Ring buoys are an absolutely essential part of the network, our safety network all over the country, and they've saved multiple lives. So if they are damaged, they need to be replaced and fixed. The first thing I want to get into anyway is that I'm sure you've all seen this, is that it's so easy to get access to equipment and to angling supplies these days. No different than kayaks and surfboards and all this kind of stuff. You can order it straight off the internet or go into any shop. Even the likes of Lidl and Aldi's now are starting to stock this kind of stuff. And that's not necessarily a good thing, because what doesn't come with that fishing rod or that them waders or anything like that is the information about the places that you're going, the safety information, the experience, all this essential information that we need to have to engage properly in activity. And then there's obviously a huge amount of issues that arise when it comes to experience, like, can you identify safe weather conditions, the conditions changing, the hazards at that specific location? And then, like, if you don't actually understand if you don't understand that there are hazards or understand what the hazards are, then it's very difficult to identify them. And we've seen that. I've seen that myself. I'm a keen surfer, swimmer, lifesaver, and I see it at the beach, especially with waves. That if there's waves coming in, there's going to be a rip current, and a lot of people don't even know what rip currents are. And if you don't know what a rip current is, it's very difficult to identify and to spot it. So, I'm sure there's hazards on rivers that you would all know about, or rivers or lakes that I might not know about. So it's all about being able to identify information. Safe fishing. This is safe fishing or safe angling. This is something that we've worked on a lot through our WISE program, which is our secondary school program. And we're talking a lot about risk assessment and ability analysis. So there's a two-pronged approach to engaging safely in activity. The first part of that is risk assessment. So that's mitigation of risk. So you can you can mitigate risk in a number of ways, whether that's equipment, weather forecasting, the different precautions that you would take. We're going to talk about them in a few minutes. That's all about risk. That's risk assessment. So that's about, is something a high risk or low risk, or is it likely to occur, or is it not likely to occur? So that's all about risk assessment. So first things first, I'd always encourage people to do a quick little risk assessment before they engage in any activity, and not just angling. And the second thing you have to do then is to look at your own ability. This is quite a personal reflection here, because you have to look at your own experience. You have to say to yourself, have I got the experience that's necessary for this? Has someone passed on this information to me? Have I built up to a point myself where I have learned and developed an understanding or an experience to engage successfully in an activity? And then something that's often underestimated these days is actually, have you trained to be able to have you actually trained and learned how to engage properly in an activity? And to the best of my knowledge, there are people out there that would train people in angling. So again, I think that's something that there should be no shame in, is actually taking a few lessons and learning how to do something perfectly or properly. So the basics anyway of angling safety. The first thing I'd always recommend is to wear a life jacket with a crotch strap, whether that's one that has padded foam on it that just sits over you, or one that inflates and it has the right specifications. The first thing I would always recommend is that it has a crotch strap, because I've seen it happen too often where someone will fall into the water off a boat or whatever it is, and the life jacket just pops up over their shoulders, and that's absolutely no good, because it renders the life jacket useless. The second thing I'd always recommend, whether you're fishing off a boat or wherever it is that you're going, that you would always tell somebody where you're going and when you intend to be back. Even the activities that I would engage in myself, I think that's something that I always have to be very conscious of, is that I do give someone an understanding of when I will be back, and that if I'm not back and I don't contact them, that they'll call me and they'll try, and if I don't get in back with them, then there's obviously something wrong, and they will contact the emergency services for me. If I am in a position where I'm not able to contact them myself. The third thing that I recommend is that if you are in difficulty, that you would have a phone and a pouch where you could ring the emergency services yourself. And that kind of relates to the last point as well, is that you should always go and engage in an activity around the water or an angling activity with a mate or a friend, because in that way, if one of you gets into trouble, the other person can contact the emergency services or vice versa. So they'd be kind of the 4 things that I'd recommend off the bat, regardless of the location. Always wear a life jacket. That would probably be one that some people might roll their eyes at, but I just think that err on the side of caution and always wear one. You just don't know when you might end up in the water, and I guarantee you, if it's just a 1% chance, and if that 1% does not go your way, and you do find yourself in the water and you do not have a life jacket on, you will seriously regret not wearing it. The life jackets that inflate are literally so small. I was only wearing one myself yesterday. They're so small, you barely even notice it. And I would just highly recommend that you get into the habit of doing it. Keep an eye on the time. The second thing I'd always recommend then as well is sun cream, especially with the weather we're getting these days. Sun cream, hat and sunglasses. I was a lifeguard myself in Lahinch for years and years, and I've heard horror stories of surfers and sailors and fishermen and fisherwomen all over the world with really bad eyes because of the glare on the water, especially in the evenings or in the morning. So I would always recommend a good pair of sunglasses to someone who's spending a bit of time near the water. This is something that we've actually included in our primary school program, is stay away from edges. Now, I think the nature of the sport or the activity that you're engaging with, that's kind of the name of the game, is getting kind of close to the edge. So whether it's leaning over a boat or fishing from a cliff or a river or a lake, we have to be very conscious of edges and what that means. So we're getting quite close to water, first of all. And the second thing is that often edges are crumbly or unstable, whether that's the bend on a river being undercut from erosion or shale cliffs or whatever it is. That it's always very important to make sure that you've got a secure footing, that you have checked what is underneath you. If there isn't, or maybe there isn't anything underneath you, you always would check that. That's a very common way that people would end up in the water. It's just the edges themselves giving way, or the boat capsizing or whatever it is, and actually ending up in the water. And I guarantee you, in that situation, you'll be very, very happy that you do have a life jacket on. But again, we're trying to prevent that. So always double check before you start fishing or engaging in an activity near the water that the edge is stable. The edge is stable. When it comes to rivers, then again, we'd always recommend wearing a life jacket. When you are angling in a river, we'd always recommend a wading stick. This is a feeling device. You can look them up online. You can buy them. They're very easy to get in most fishing tackle shops. So basically what that allows you to do is allows you to walk out into a river, to feel the bottom, to feel for holes, to feel for troughs, maybe it's on the beach, and to actually make sure that before you take that next step that you're not going to end up in a deep hole. Again, in that situation, you'd be very glad you had a life jacket on as well. The third thing there I have in is a wader belt, and that prevents flushing. If your top half does get a bit of water in it, that it doesn't flush down into the bottom of the waders if it's one piece. We'd also recommend a knife, and that we're going to talk about that in a second, but that's really good when it comes into entanglement or getting rid of waders as well. So in terms of flow, then 1 foot of moving water is enough to move most cars. 6 inches of moving water is enough to sweep a person off their feet. Now, like, that might not be the case in a little stream, but most definitely in a bigger river, 6 inches of moving water, if it's moving fast enough, will actually move a person off their feet. You definitely feel that in the sea as well, where a tide surges or a wave crashes on the rocks, and that the force of that moving water, if it's moving fast enough, will actually move you off your feet. The thing that really gets me about rivers is that flow is relentless. It doesn't ever stop. It's not forgiving. It's an insurmountable force, and it just keeps, the pressure is constant and it keeps coming. so yeah, again, it's just something to be very, very conscious of. I'm trying to make you aware that the environments that you are engaging in, there is a huge amount of risk associated with that, and it's something that you need to be very, very aware of before you engage in these activities to be able to engage in them safely. Obviously then after storms, you've got fallen trees and debris will have entered the water very often. A river that I used to live very close to was the Clare Glens, and there was a couple of years there where it was completely inaccessible because of the amount of trees and stuff that had fallen into the river and had to be cleared out. So the other thing then you have is like the eddies and eddy currents, which are currents that flow back up the river after the river flows around rocks. And obviously then as well, coming back to the insurmountable force, that if something does get caught between two rocks or two trees or whatever it is, or a tree, that it's very difficult to get out of it. So that's a jamming or a pinning effect. If you are entering the water, you know, it's something that you should be very conscious of, well as entanglement. So staying away from the likes of trees or briars or whatever it is, that you can quite easily become trapped, and it can be very difficult to get out. So that can be when your knife becomes very, very useful. Depth changes again in lakes. We're onto lakes. Sorry, depth changes are often sudden and drastic with very unstable edges. The larger the lake as well, usually the larger the wind fetch. So the greater the size of the chop. And I spent a lot of time paddling kayaks in lakes as well, and you'd be surprised that in a lake like Cahill or a bigger lake, the size of the chop that can grow and develop over that distance. So again, something to be very conscious of. Saltwater, again, kind of closer to my own area of expertise. Tides, 6 hours to come in, 6 hours to come out. We're bi-journal in Ireland, so that means you get an in and out, and an in and out, so 2 tides in, 2 tides out every single day. The significance of that, I'm trying to get conscious of time here, sorry guys. Access, it can be very easy to get out to a point or to a place and to go fishing. And if the tide comes in over that, then it can be impossible to get back out. This is a photo that I took yesterday. At high tide, I swam through this hole. There's an entrance over here on the right hand side of my screen, and I actually swam out through this. And then as I came back that evening, it was 4 meters in the air. So that just shows how there can be 4 or 5 meters of difference in the height of the water. Spring tides are larger tides, so you could have, like in Ireland, we could have a 1 meter low and a 6 meter high, so that's a 5 meter difference in height. And a neap tide then is when the tides are small, and that would mean usually between a 2 meter low and a 4 meter high, so that's a 2 meter range. So I'm going to quickly show you magic seaweed. I might actually do all these now, I'll show you in a second. So the second thing then when you're in fishing in saltwater is the swell size, which is the height of the waves as they roll through the weather buoys out at sea. The swell period is the distance between the waves, and that's quite significant because it denotes the power of the wave. So the higher the period swell, the more power is there, and then also the swell direction. So I'm going to just show you quickly what I'm talking about there. I'm going to share my, where is it? I'm going to share my screen. Google Chrome, share. So I can't see it because of this thing. Here we go. So Windy is a fantastic app to help you visualize, the wind direction. So I'm going to show you where I'm based out of. So you can see today that somewhere like Lahinch Bay, in terms of waves, this is wave direction, it's quite exposed. So whereas somewhere up around, you know, your Ballyvaughan direction, you can see it's really sheltered from this here. So this is the windy.com app. If I was to show you the wind here, you can see then, oh, will it change for me? Well, you can see then where in the wind today, Ballyvaughan is quite exposed, but Lahinch would be quite calm. So that's just interesting how you can see that. Another one then for tides and for all of that information, you get it here on magicseaweed.com. So you can see I have it in for Lahinch. You'll see, let's go to today. I was going to keep it there because for whatever reason. You can see Wednesday there. You'll see this is the period. This is the swell height here. This is your period. Again, as I said, the bigger the period, so anything over 10 seconds would usually be quite a big period, up to 15 seconds or 17 seconds maybe. And here you have your wind speed and your wind direction. So all very, very important things that you can actually check out. The one that I like the most really is windy, because it'll actually show you where is sheltered and where isn't sheltered. And back to Magic Seaweed, you can also check out the tide times as well. And also first light, last light, sunrise, sunset as well. So really good app there as well. I'm gonna keep motoring here while I have you for 2 seconds. Keep going. So just to give you a little overview of our own programs, this is one that's going really well at the minute, is primary aquatics water safety. For any teachers that are out there, you'll find our resources on here at teachpause.ie. Really good information for kids that you could teach your own kids, or whatever it is. Recommend to primary teachers. Really, really important program to get out there. We developed a new website, as I said, called teachpause.ie. We had a lot of nice publications in over the COVID-19 period. I suppose it's still going on. We had a lot of good projects on there, which inserts in the children's times and stuff. Keep going, Bernard. Nice one to look out for before, if any of you have small children or grandchildren or whatever it is. We've got a program called Hold Hands, and the reason I'm getting to this is because we're expecting a really, really busy summer this year, and on the beaches and lakes all over Ireland, and I think that it's going to be absolutely essential that there's a real appreciation for water safety and for the dangers that are out there. Again, not to be a Debbie Downer, but more to make people aware of the dangers and hazards, and to try and encourage people to be very safe this summer. So this is one that we have, again, the kind of the start of our cradle to grave approach is our Hold Hands program. So we're encouraging preschool children to hold hands when they're with when they're near the water. And the principal message is always to have an adult with you when you're close to the water. And again, we're rolling this out to every single creche and preschool in Ireland this year, so keep an eye out for that one. And again, just to show you some of the resources, and this is kind of the one that might be most applicable to some of you, and will be rivers and lakes. So again, you can see the messages we're trying to get across there. These are some of the resources that we're going to have out. It's a storyboard, so the kids can talk through it, the teachers can guide them through, and then there's these key messages to get out there as well. That's a nice image. I'll skip the beach one. And yeah, I think there's a couple of questions in the chat, and that's me done. I know I kind of flew through the end of it there, but I'd love to take any questions that you have. Sorry for rushing a little bit. Sorry for going over, but yeah, looking forward to answering some questions.
Thank you very much, Bernard. That was an incredibly informative and interesting talk. And there's some really important messages there, particularly the hold hands ones there towards the end. That's I think something that people will be getting on board with over the summer months. We have a question or two that have come in through the Q&A facility, and I'm just going to hand over to my colleagues Imelda and Nadine, who've been busy in the background collating those messages, and they will put them to you now.
Very good, thank you, Sarah. Hello, Bernard. One question: what is a rip current, and what would you do if you got stuck in a rip current?
Yeah, this is one that is very, very, very close to my heart. I actually, not that I want to plug anything other than Water Safety Ireland, but I have a little Instagram channel on my own called Cahill Aquatics, and I have a video on that called How to Avoid a Rip Current. But I'm going to explain it now for the crack. So if you got to think about it like this: if I had something to throw up, what goes up must come down, what goes in must go back out. So if there's waves, rip currents only occur at beaches with waves. So basically, if there's water moving in, i.e. a wave, that water has to get back out to sea. So a rip current in that case then is the recycling of a wave's energy. So as the water moves in, that energy has to get back out, and it forms a rip current. Now, how to identify rip current, I guess, is the next thing. So if you think about it, the best thing is to think about it in the sense that if there's energy coming in, that's a safe place to swim because energy is moving in. And then rip currents, usually in a rip current, there's no waves at all because that's water going back out to sea. So what I would recommend then, or what I would say then on that is that how to get out of one then, like worst case scenario. So I'd say always swim where there's waves, which would be how to avoid it. Always swim where there are waves. And then if you are caught in a rip current, to swim parallel to shore or to swim towards the waves would be what I'd recommend there. So there's three things there. One is that it's recycling of waves energy, always similar to our waves. And if you are caught in one, or first thing I'd recommend if you're caught in one is to relax and stay calm. And then the last thing then would be to swim toward our waves or parallel to the shore. That'll be my little 2 pence on rip currents.
I have just a question there for you, Bernard. Well, it's not really a question, it's not quite associated, but just somebody was saying there how great and important the message is, and just to say thanks for the campaign. And I'm actually going to direct this at Lorraine, who's in IFI, Education and Outreach. Just they're asking, is there any information included on avoiding spreading invasive species like crayfish plague, and also identifying or avoiding hazards from bankside invasive species like giant hogweed?
Yeah, so thank you. So later on in the week, we're going to be talking about habitats and protecting habitats. So the idea of spreading invasive weeds and transferring crayfish plague and biosecurity is going to be covered in that. And it's mostly through messaging and through some short videos rather than a webinar, Donna. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Another question for Bernard. Bernard, is there any guidance for using a boat on a lake, particularly when the wind gets up?
Yes. So again, what we'll have, that'll all be part of our campaign that we're going to be releasing this week. So if you check out watersafety.ie, and most likely you'll see it on social media as well, or yeah, watersafety.ie/angling, or at on social media. It should be, we're going to put a bit of money into it, so hopefully you'll be able to get it through that. But again, from my own pragmatic approach, I would always recommend checking the weather forecast before you go out on a lake, and I would highly recommend the Windy app. So can I share my screen for a quick second? I'm going to show you a lake that I'm kind of familiar with. It would be Cahill. So you can actually, on the Windy app, you can actually go in, going past home, up towards the Shannon, and you can actually see the wind direction. This is a bad week for showing you, but you can actually see over the course of time what way that wind will be blowing, and you can pick a sheltered side on that lake then to go out. So I'd always recommend the key to avoiding, or the key to dealing with a squall or whatever, is not to actually end up in one. So if you fish along this edge here, you can see it's going to be quite sheltered on Wednesday morning or whatever it is. Whereas if you fish in the middle here, you're going to get you're going to be in quite an exposed area. So like forecasting these days is absolutely incredible. So I'd say that there's probably no excuse maybe for getting caught in a squall, but I suppose making sure then that your equipment is serviced and you've got a life jacket on, all that kind of stuff, and knowing where the safest access points, egress points are, knowing where alternative access and egress points, I guess, as well, not just when you came from. So there are definitely a lot of things that you can do to prevent, yeah, definitely preventative measures that can be taken beforehand, but effective planning can allow you to better deal with unforeseen circumstances as well, like an unexpected squall. There's only so much forecasting you can do, but definitely preparation will allow you to know better or safer egress points if you are caught in one, or what else? Life jackets again, making sure your boat works properly. Yeah, I think they're the basic ones I'd go to for now.
And just one there, Bernard. So it's more related to risk analysis. So for anyone out untrained in risk analysis outside a safety organisation or safety department, a risk analysis and subsequent mitigation measures would not be generally understood. So basically they're sort of saying, how would you approach an angling risk assessment? Yeah,
so when I suppose there's a, like, you can look at this and like a risk assessment for a business or for anything like that is quite a detailed report, and it would be pages and thousands of pages of information. It's quite laborious and intensive. Now that's not what I'm talking about when I talk about a risk assessment for a leisure fisherman or a person that's going out fishing or angling. I'd always recommend something a little bit faster and more efficient than that. So it'd be more like that you look at, like that you would look at the conditions, you look at your forecast beforehand, you would check and see how it's going to, and you'd build up a repertoire as well. So like over the course of a month, a couple of months, that you would actually know that in this condition, it's going to look like this, and you build up your repertoire. So that's your forecasting. The second thing then is that you read off and you do a bit of research on the dangers of fishing at that location, whether it's a river, if it's a river, then it's flow, current, eddies, edges, all that kind of stuff, whether it's the sea, it's tide, swell, wind. Do a bit of research, do a bit of learning about it, understand what hazards are there, what risks are there, and then so that's that. And then I'd also then highly recommend then as well is doing asking a local or asking somebody that is experienced in the area to share that information, their local knowledge with you. And I think that's the nice thing, and maybe the nicest thing about the water activities that we do engage in. It is quite community-based. You're never too far, it would be possible to find someone who does have that information, and it would be possible to get it off them. So yeah, I talk about risk assessments. It sounds quite formal, but I'm really just talking about the necessary steps that you would take before you would actually engage in that activity. I think forecasting is one, understanding what hazards there might be in that area, and then the last one then is actually getting experience and getting that information from somebody else. And the last thing I suppose then as well is that if you really wanted to be sure is to actually go with somebody who is experienced or to get training in the area as well. So they'd be the kind of things I'd be talking about there. I guess I kind of glided over that a little bit in the presentation.